Thanks for tuning in to your favorite content creator, UTV. To find out more, follow us on our social media platforms: YouTube UTV124, Facebook UTV124, Instagram UTV124, Twitch UTV124, TikTok UTV_124, and Flow TV channel 124. Remember, UTV, TV for you.
I can't
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. It is Thursday, June 24th, 2021. It is, well, we're getting closer to the weekend, I guess. But before we get into it, let me say good morning, as always, to those of you listening to us on radio. That's on our radio partner station, Hits FM 92.1 and 91.1. Also, if you are watching us on television, channel 124 on Flow, that is UTV Underground Television. Appreciate it too. And of course, if you're watching us on the several social media platforms where we stream every day, the shows from YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook, we appreciate that too. So good morning, and a special good morning to Auntie Veve and Miss Angie, Winston Lubin. A thorn in my side. Winston Lumen, good morning to you. Barra, happy belated birthday. I heard it was your birthday, so I hope you did enjoy from the videos I see going viral. I guess you did. And also, I wanted to extend condolences to Damian Charles Wax. I heard your mother passed away, so I just wanted to say that I'm sorry about that, and I extend my condolences to you and your family. And with everything, I hope that you're doing okay. And for us now, as I say, and as we continue to do, we need to look at the issues. And we have fallen off, and I don't know whether it's, it's just me, or I think maybe it's a, societal thing where we are giving too much attention to COVID right now. And even with the reports that are made, the figures that are out there, that sort of thing, and I say we, I'm included, I think, in that we haven't placed a lot of emphasis on what is going on. So before we do that and look at what's happening, the developments that are happening, I think we need to look at the past. And I think there were some people, rightfully so, that were concerned, suspicious almost, of the figures and, the discrepancies that would come out of different reports, and how even the format of the reports that we got, media people, it changed as well. So let us start there.
Health authorities have registered some successes in the now years-long management of the COVID-19 crisis. More than 21,000 people have received their first shot of the COVID-19 vaccine. The devastating third wave of the pandemic experienced during the months of January and February has receded. The national COVID-19 infection rate by the end of March hovered at around 12%. However, the Health Ministry's reporting on COVID-positive non-nationals has been inconsistent in recent weeks. Between March 16th to the 29th, 5 United States visitors tested positive for COVID-19. The Health Ministry issued 11 press releases on COVID-19 infections in that time. Unlike previous press releases from the Health Ministry, the status of the 5 COVID-positive non-nationals was not specified. NBC Prime did request comment from the Health Ministry's communication unit. We did not get a reply. Citing the COVID-19 incidence rate in St. Lucia, the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, still does not recommend any travel to the island despite the recent declines in the domestic COVID-19 infection rate. The CDC reviewed and updated its travel health notice for St. Lucia on April 2nd, maintaining its level 4 very high-level advisory imposed on the Caribbean destination since last November. The CDC's no travel advisory, however, has not totally dissuaded U.S. holidaymakers from flying to St. Lucia. Last year, more than 40,000 visitors from the United States, Canada, and UK vacationed on island.
A special committee has been established to provide oversight to the resumption of cruise tourism.
Tourism officials are also gearing up to welcome the return of the cruise ship sector in June. Almost 19% of the U.S. population is fully vaccinated against COVID-19. But health experts worry the spread of other COVID-19 variants is outpacing the U.S.'s aggressive immunization program. The B117 UK variant has been detected in all 50 states. St. Lucia does not have the capacity to test for COVID-19 variants. Along with other CARICOM countries, St. Lucia relies on the labs at the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, headquartered in Trinidad, to test for new strains. It can take up to 4 weeks before the test results are transmitted. The B11 strain, first detected in the UK last September, has also been found in St. Lucia. CARPHA reported the findings to St. Lucia's Health Ministry back in January, some 4 weeks after 5 people, among them 2 England residents and 3 St. Lucians, tested positive in December. The Health Ministry sends CARPHA up to 10 samples for testing every week, according to the Chief Medical Officer. As of March 29th, 15 people were confirmed positive for the UK variant. That number hasn't changed since February. Rihani Isidore, NBC Prime.
Now, I do remember that some people were concerned that, data was being kept from certain reports, like how many tourists had COVID, how many were positive, that sort of thing. And even the format of the reports were changed, and people were speculating on whether they needed the U.S. to open up back to them and take them off of the no-fly list and everything like that. So I understand, and I understood when people had a problem with that. They were suspicious of the figures that they were seeing. And I do not think that even now it doesn't bode well, because we're seeing even some more serious mistakes being made in the reports, not just in the numbers being given, but even in the classification of deaths. We're seeing some of these discrepancies. So I think we need to take a look at that. It happened just this week. And for me, I think it really put in my mind that even though all of this is happening and there are so many things, and maybe we're exhausted of talking about COVID, we need to make sure that we do not keep our eye off. We need to be cognizant of the reports that are coming out there and the figures that are being given, because we could let something slip. So let's take a look at that.
There have been 5 more COVID-19 related deaths. So says the Ministry of Health in a press release issued on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. According to the ministry, this brings the total number of COVID-19 related deaths to 84. But these new deaths aren't actually new. According to the Ministry of Health's release, they were all recorded between February and May 2021. The details of those deaths are as follows. Death 80 is a 60-year-old female from Dennery who died on April 4th. Death 81 is a 54-year-old male from Castries who died on February 23rd. Death 82 is a 76-year-old male from Grosley who died on April 5th. Death 83 is a 92-year-old female from Castries who died on March 9th. Death 84 is an 84-year-old female from Soufrière who died on May 29th. It is unclear why the deaths were not listed in the order in which they occurred, but that's only one of the questions arising from Tuesday's peculiar press release. Other pointed queries include: was a different cause of death recorded for each of these 5 individuals at the time of their passing? Has the Ministry of Health changed the criteria to determine that a death is COVID-related? And were the results of COVID-19 tests for these 5 individuals only just received? While none of these questions have been answered, the Ministry of Health, through the press release, has provided a brief explanation. It is stated that the Epidemiology Unit of the Ministry of Health periodically reviews and updates the COVID-19 database. This is a process referred to as data cleaning. Through this activity, those 5 deaths were, quote, reclassified. With more questions than answers, the Choice News team reached out to the Ministry of Health for more clarity through either an exclusive interview or group press conference. However, we understand that officials are still reviewing reports and records, and only then will a more extensive statement be issued. While the public awaits answers, there is yet another issue arising. The first of the 5 new deaths announced on Tuesday, June 22nd, is being referred to as death number 80. However, in a press release dated June 2nd, death number 80 was announced as an 84-year-old female from Soufrière. Since there was never a retraction of that announcement, it is unclear why the newly announced deaths are not referred to as deaths 81 through 85. We also await clarity from the Ministry of Health on that discrepancy. For Choice News Now, Nelsia Shalmine reporting.
In more news related to COVID-19, on Wednesday, the Ministry of Health announced receipt of 11 new cases of COVID-19 from a batch of 206 samples. The total number of cases reported is now.
So in this report there, we could see that there are deaths from February to, May? And it's only now that people are realizing that they were COVID deaths. And for me, I wonder how that could happen, and the bodies and how they were treated in the same, in the same way. If it's not a COVID death, how really can you tell, looking back months later, that it was actually a COVID death? And even when you have the added numbers, why is it not 85 and then you put it at 84? When people have certain issues with the way the COVID numbers are being dealt with, and that was from months before, this doesn't bode well. It doesn't come together and mesh well for the CMO and the other health authorities and the people who are still suspicious of the way things are being done. And I've heard the speculation that, you know what, somebody told me, oh, you're doing pants a day. I waited for y'all. They're going to change the numbers and make it increase because they're going to say y'all are bringing in COVID. Now, people will have these sort of thoughts, but when these things show up, I think, it's really not something that allows people to trust what's being said. But just so we can take another look at the numbers there, let's take a look at the next image to hear what exactly the health ministry said about the numbers that we're seeing with COVID. Let's put up the next image. It says the Ministry of Health seeks to provide clarification on the deaths reported earlier today, Tuesday, June 22nd. The unit of the Ministry of Health periodically performs reviews and updates of the database. And I do not think that is enough of an explanation to the people of St. Lucia if you're going to be adding some number. And it's not just a number either. I've said this before. It might look like number, but these are family members. These are people. And I think in their death, they also need to be respected. This exercise, it continues, was conducted between Monday and Tuesday. The 5 deaths that were reported today were part of a reclassification and resulted from this review. These deaths all occurred between February and May of this year, 2021. Now, I have had interviews, you can take it down now. I have had interviews with people, relatives of those who have died from COVID, who continue to say that they do not understand what was going on. They do not like the way that they were approached. We've aired it on the show before. And when you see things like that, for me, it's really not about the numbers. And one person, that's Akeem Lacha, his father passed away of COVID-related problems. And I think he has called the show before and spoke about, it being very difficult. But he also pointed that out, and it must be very difficult for people who have personally felt what that is like to lose a loved one, to talk about deaths in a way where, you got a death wrong and it's actually COVID and that sort of thing. So let's take a look with what he had to say on the matter when he did speak on Facebook. Let's take a look at the next image, where we see him saying, people, when they enter the care of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, have the ability to die and then raise from the dead and then somehow die again. What exactly is going on, Madam CMO Sharon Belmar George? One, according to my records, as of yesterday, we are at number 80 reported COVID deaths. Number two, your last reported death was June 2nd, number 80. So unless this person rose from the dead on the third day, please explain. Number three, why your press release today, June 22nd, clarification states that we have 5 newly reclassified COVID-19 deaths. How exactly does that happen? This has legal and medical implications for people and staff at the funeral parlors. Number four, explain why your count is now 84 as per the June 22nd press release and not number 85 as most of us would have imagined the new count to be. Please come with a Venn diagram, a Rubik Cube, decision chart, a thermometer for my temperature. I'm a little hot and worried and concerned that the bodies of loved and lost ones in St. Lucia are being erroneously recorded, reported, and documented in history. And you know what? I couldn't even say it better than that, because when you are recording, and he has a point there, when we have to look back, you can take that down now, and analyze our figures and where we are at. We are making mistakes, grave mistakes, I think. And like he said, he understands, I think, personally what that means, because he has lost his father. I think he was number 2. The second COVID death we recorded on island, that was Oswald Wilkie Larcher, a prominent lawyer, some people knew. But he has a point there. And I think when he mentions that, there's also something that we see even with the administration, our politicians, the Prime Minister even, when he mentions, you know, there was a point where he said it's just over 50 deaths. And I think people took umbrage with that, people took offense, and I think they were right to do so, because every number matters. If you can't say just over 50, like, you know, the others don't matter. You need to know exactly how many people have died, because this is almost a show of respect as well. And the Prime Minister has also said something like, when we recorded the deaths, it was almost for the greater good. Akim Larcher again decided to speak on that in the way that he feels disrespected, and his family feels disrespected with the way the deaths are recorded and even spoken about in St. Lucia.
I mean, the other thing to that was an insult to my intelligence and to my family and to me as an individual, that the death of my father during COVID under this administration, the individual pain that we face for the bad decisions this government made, was for a greater good, that the death of over 60-something individuals under their leadership was somehow our personal and our own responsibility and fault, because nothing is at their fault. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this?
I can't stay.
Protocols for international visitors while in St. Lucia. The following protocols are established to guide the stay of all guests while on island in order to mitigate any possible spread of infection. During the first 14 days, visitors are allowed to patronize approved beaches, restaurant, sea and land excursions, and sites and attractions. All visits are scheduled and pre-arranged by their respective accommodation providers. During this period, all visitors will be transported to and from the certified sites using only COVID-19 certified tourism transportation. After the first 14 days, if any visitor wishes to stay on island beyond the 14-day period, they must apply for and receive a health clearance certificate from the Ministry of Health. Visitors will be allowed to travel, be out in the wider public, and patronize local businesses unsupervised once health clearance certificates have been received. During their entire stay, visitors must wear their masks whenever they are in public places and maintain the mandatory 6 feet distancing from others.
You just a cock it up, back it
to fling it up on me. So heaven in your waistline when you make it roll. Enough gal a road that tell me say them a bit too, but none of them don't have it like you. When it come to wine and skill, gal, you know you are the baddest. Them a dancehall queen, but you a dancehall goddess. Them gal a road really need little practice, but everything I need, girl, you have it. Cause you's a professional bumper roller, qualified waistline controller. You a bubbling general, them gang they just a bubbling soldier. You's a professional bumper roller, qualified waistline controller. If them girl they a bubbling boss, you a bubbling CEO. Yeah, I work 7 days straight feet. All I hope and pray feet. I can't stay.
If the public sector unions did not get the message during the border control debate, the Prime Minister is making himself clear once again.
Stop it. It is not your job to tell the government how to run government. You are a component of government. And so saying that you don't like this project or you don't like that project, that is for the electorate of this country to determine when the election comes. That's when that judgment day is going to come.
There is a crisis on our hands, Prime Minister Alan Shasney says. St. Lucia's head of government on Saturday addressed the nation, providing additional information on plans for a phased reopening of the country. And one of the issues addressed is the current stalemate between public sector unions and government over a proposed mixed modality of wage payments, a combination of cash and government bonds.
Stop it. It is not your job to tell the government how to run government. You are a component of government. And so saying that you don't like this project or you don't like that project, that is for the electorate of this country to determine when the election comes.
Remember that? The Prime Minister last year, I'm sure you remember that, when they wanted to cut the public servant salaries in half, and he says to them, stop it. And it's interesting when he says that it's not your job, it's for the electorate to decide when the time comes. I guess the time is coming, and I don't know if then the civil servants, one part of the electorate, I don't know how that works, but now it seems the Prime Minister understands that, the public servants, maybe they need the attention, we need to praise them a bit more, and all of that happening because yesterday was Public Service Week, I think, and Public Servants Day, so there was the ecumenical service for them yesterday, and some words were being said. But I think in all of that, just like on Mother's Day and on Father's Day, when the nice words are being said, I don't like to focus on what is being said, especially this year. This year, the Prime Minister wants to win an election, so he got the by, as we have seen. What I care about is how people have been treated. The same public servants that people speak about, well, glowingly now, how were they treated in the past 4 years? And I have always said that people will forget what you said and what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I think not just the Prime Minister, but the people around him, from his own Prime Minister, from his father, and everything else, and the people that he is around. How does this administration, how have they treated you? And I figure some of you, maybe you're in the lunchrooms and sometimes you watch the show, or you go home to watch the show, or you have your own feelings yourself about what is going on. Some people are afraid to be victimized and all that. Public service workers, they are, I think, many of whom cannot speak out loud. They are silent, mostly, I think, but I do realize that many of them feel disrespected. They felt disrespected by this administration. So we're going to take a look back on how you've been treated and the things that have been said about you.
This morning, again, on the newspapers, what is the headline this morning?
The Voice again.
Yeah. CSA opposes curfew and lengthening of SOE. Now, the CSA yet they're opposing that when the Prime Minister is doing that to keep the economy going. Okay?
Front page again.
Front page.
Front page.
Yeah. Now,
CSA opposes curfew.
Yeah, that's what you see.
So
you see where we go wrong?
It is as if like the CSA now is the government.
Correct. Now, let me tell you something I learned. 80 cents on every dollar goes to pay civil servants. 80 cents on every dollar earned goes to pay the civil servants.
That's in St. Lucia?
Yeah, in St. Lucia.
80 cents?
80 cents.
So that's 80%.
And out of that 80 cents, 40 cents is earned from the tourism industry. Close it down. Where is the Prime Minister to get money to pay?
My goodness. We will stay on that for a little bit. I know before you go to your preamble, you wanted to add anything, Brother Peter, before just very short, briefly, before Sir Michael goes to his
but
preamble.
you and Sir Michael know, and a lot of your callers know, because I listen to the talk show sometimes. We all know the reason they want to close the country down is because they want everybody to be on the breadline, then start complaining about the government, get wild and disorderly, break the law, invade the Prime Minister's office, the House of Parliament, chaos, and okay, let's throw the Prime Minister out. That is all champagne they're trying to do.
So, Michael Shastri once again lying on public servants and how they are being paid. And even now when I look at that, to lie so blatantly and talk about tourism and what we get from tourism that pay public servants. And I also remember Michael Shastri saying that, you know, if you're working, maybe you should get another job and try to put it together so you can really feed your family. The disrespect there, the lies, and even Peter Josie joining. By the way, Peter Josie, my mother tell me to tell you, she tell me to ask you, and they believed in you, and people were working, and she was going out and doing or whatever, electoral, whatever, and she was never paid, if you remember that. That's what I was told to ask you, so I'm asking it. And when we talk about, you know, the violence, and now Peter Josie talking about that's what they want to see, and you can see how early on that was already being put together, that people are violent and that's what they want to see in the country. But for me and for the people who are working as public service workers, you can see that people are lying on your head. They want you to sacrifice and do all of these things. But you know what? They'll talk to you nice because they need the votes. That is not all. It's not just Michael Shastri, it's also his Prime Minister, his own Prime Minister, to say, speaking on public service workers and, you know, just giving them even more mépris.
And I'm putting tremendous pressure on the civil service, who are not, I don't think, are being disobedient, but they themselves have lost how to think.
And if you see the committee that made up the oversight committee for the hospital, if I were to read it to you, you would understand why I have been under attack to the extent that I have been. All key people in all key ministries, from Accountant General's department down to permanent secretaries in Ministry of Finance and permanent secretaries in Ministry of Health. This is a network that a lot of people would rather the truth never come to light. So I can well understand why everything is being done. And go and look at the report that you read from. That's who made up the committees. So I can well tell you why I am getting opposition from every angle in government to get basic information about government, about the St. Jude project. You know why? Because a lot of people in government now begin to realize that there's going to be some exposure and people have to answer questions. You know what it is like to come into an environment like this? Where everybody's antenna is up because something is going to be revealed somewhere along the way. And once that happens, people will have to answer questions. So you know who the scapegoat becomes? The minister who is the one doing the probe. But they can make threats. They can do what they want. I am going to carry this probe until the end.
We've inherited a situation in which you have some people in the civil service, that even though they're not supposed to be political, act very politically.
Right.
And you have to be patient with them. I mean, I don't have the ability to go and fire people.
I think that's a problem that needs to be taken head on. My position, and I'm not afraid to declare my position on it, I don't think you sacrifice good workers for the sake of workers who do not produce. And as we speak, since the COVID situation started, there have people in my ministry who have never reported to work one day. And yet still, I challenge anybody to show me that the productivity of the ministry is any less than it should be when you have all the workers. So clearly, if there's one thing that COVID has proved, is that the public service can operate with a lot less staff than we have presently and still be as efficient and productive as when you have the full staff complement. And that is
Minister
why...
Joseph, just to cut you for 2 seconds there, I'm receiving a barrage of messages here from people who say, I agree 100%. Somebody else here said, excellent statement by Minister Joseph, just to let you know that. But there's a barrage of messages there agreeing with exactly what you said.
So, and we had a discussion today, and we were reviewing the situation. I was looking at the performance of my ministry, and I was looking at the number of people who have been at work and the number who have not been at work. Now, we should never sink the country for the sake of one sector. And that is my position, and my cabinet colleagues are fully aware. You do not run the country into the precipice just to please some unions and some workers who have not reported to work at all, who have made no contribution for the last month, and we don't blame them for not being there. We know it's because of the COVID situation, but the reality is we don't even miss them because you're not even aware that they're not there because the work is still being done. Yes, some people are bearing more strain. So here's the reality of what Rick was saying. And Rick and I have had these discussions before. The reality is that you need a more lean public service. Now, what are the options available to us? The unions refuse to guide their members to take the deferred payment. Then the next thing is you go to Parliament, you legislate a cut. Or do you restructure the entire public service? And I always tell people, I don't say one thing and do another thing. I try to lead by example what I do. So in my Ministry of Housing, where are the PS, and how many top officials, I just merge housing under economic development with one PS at economic development for both housing, and then you have a DPS in the other section. So immediately you have cut out the need for somebody at the top there, which brings savings. They continue to have people on the books for more than 10 years who've been on suspension, still getting a government salary every month. Some of them are overseas, some of them are working other places because of the inefficiencies of the Public Service Commission in bringing closure to some of these issues. These people continue to draw down on government resources that are not available. So I agree with Rick that this thing is spoiled badly, and the unions are not helping the situation. And I refuse to be part of a process where we are going to sink the whole country, which includes both the private sector and the public sector, to sustain some people
who are not willing to make a basic sacrifice at this point in time. In other words, if you look at the 3 months deferment of 50% of their salary, that is 1.5 months to delay the payment over the year. 1.5 months out of the 12 months, and the rest of the months you get your full payment. People are not willing to make that little sacrifice to sustain and to save. So they don't care how many other people lose their job in the process.
Yeah.
I mean, how unconscionable can that be?
Guy Joseph asking you how unconscionable it is for public service workers to say that they want to keep their salaries the way it is and they don't want it cut in by 50%. And you also hear Guy Joseph say, you know what, during COVID, y'all didn't come to work and they didn't miss you. Y'all not working, they don't miss you. They need a restructuring of the public service and all of what he's saying there in the couple of minutes that you just heard. So from the Michael Shasday, who will lie blatantly and say 80%, 80 cents on every dollar that the country makes goes to paying public service salaries, that can't even make sense. This year, I think it's $1.6 billion our budget is, so that would mean $1.2 billion goes to paying public service workers. I mean, the blatant lies with Guy Joseph, again, the disrespect that you will hear, and the speech of, you know, we won't miss you, and you cannot make even the basic sacrifice of half your salary when the country needs it. But what are they doing right now? You're siding over land to people that their name not even on land, but give it to Mark Mirage for $9 million. Find a way to sign Pedro a letter to make sure somebody can get $167 million in our name. You can do that, but we couldn't have paid the public service, you know. And the continued disrespect, even when we're seeing all of this put together, it's like they're campaigning against public service workers, like they think it's a SLP that day, like they're against them. And you heard the Prime Minister say there are people who are SLP supporters and they're not doing their work and everything like that. I continue to think that it is unfair. We continue to see people being used, people being disrespected, the technical people within the public service, their work is not being respected. You will write something down for them like they did for the PTOs. They will cross it out and do what they want to do. And there are so many other instances of that, the disrespect that some people are facing. And if not the disrespect, then they're going to dangle the acting thing in front of you and for you to make sure that you do the work. And if you don't, and if you do, maybe then they'll put you in a position that you were supposed to be in anyway. So all of what we're seeing here continues to show me the disrespect. And for Guy Joseph, from December 16th of 2016 to 2020, we've seen about 280 new public service workers coming into the system. About 80 of them from Guy's constituency, and 30 of those are his relatives. So when we're seeing the nepotism even in the system, and when people actually want to do their work, you are continually insulted in so many different ways and lied on and all kinds of things. You cannot get what is being what's supposed to be there for you. So no, we're not done yet, and there's a lot more that we can go and get into, but we're going to do one more, continuing in the camp of the United Workers' Party and how they are treating and talking about you.
Inside government, Philip J. Pierre, July the 8th, 2014. But let's go to the next clip from that video, that interview.
Because the government is not a business.
Indeed.
You come to your business, your firm, and I read somewhere that you must have business to run a country. Nonsense. You go into a business, you see this morning, my business not making money, you go home. And what people say is yes, sir, and they go home. You carry that in a government. You can't do it in a government. And I think that's what people want you to do in the government.
Hold on there. Who say you can't do it in a government? Who say you can't send people home in a government? You can't send people home in a government? Then if you can't send people home with a government, then you shouldn't have a care in the world. You shouldn't worry about the IMF. You shouldn't worry about anything. Just do whatever you want. Don't care about paying back anything. Don't do nothing. And let's see if the IMF or the people that you owe money to as a country ain't gonna be dictating to you what you have to do. Because whether you like it or not, you still are every day subject to business decisions. You can call it whatever you want, Philip J. Pierre. Why you think y'all making noise talking about rent, the same rent y'all had to pay? The same rent that the government is looking to cut down on by redeveloping the Daha Mall.
So you're speaking about $62 million over the next 15 years that we've committed ourselves to repaying. Could be more, depending on whether the and of course that is no VAT. So that's just the government.
And then you have to add VAT.
I'm not including VAT because you know there be people who say, well, that's going back to government. But I'm just talking about that aspect. You know, but that's a substantial amount of money to be tying in at this point in time.
It is, and I mean you've been very generous, huh?
Very, I know, very generous.
It's a lot more than that, because you've in effect added about 40,000 more a month,
right? Yeah.
Now, which is 10%. It will be more than that. Your utilities alone will be $40,000 more a month.
Right.
Electricity, air condition, water, and those things alone will be more than that.
Dr. Haley, I just want to show you a graph, and this is of Government of St. Lucia rental payments per annum between 2008, 2009. And 2000 up until the last year gone, up until March 31st, 2021. And as you can see, over the past 5 years, we've seen an incredible rise in that figure. I mean, I've color-coded it just for the benefit of those out there. In yellow, that period within the Alan Chastney administration. And we're now looking at over $70 million on annual payments of government for rent at this point in time. That's a very, very concerning rate of increase. And even before that 2020, 2021, it was increasing. It was clearly way out of control.
70 million a year. And you're going to add another 4 million just from this. Another 4 million. And again, that's why it raises the question of why did the government believe this is prudent at this point? Why should we do this?
So, Norbert, again, saying to Pip, when Pip says you cannot just fire a public servant, he says, why not? I did not think, and I do not think that right now you would have to explain that. But with the public service, you need the Public Service Commission, you need the trade unions, you need to know what's happening with the different grade system. You cannot just fire people. And Norbert knows that as a public servant himself, because our taxpayers' money is what's paying him, even though he cannot pay his rent, he finds it difficult and all kinds of things happening, that he's a public servant still. So he cannot get fired in that way. And we continue to see just how asinine people will be like Norbert and the rest of them. And when you say that you're going to fire someone, I think, and you'll tell me, you'll call me, if you can, the public servants, that people there will be like everyone else. You could support whoever you want. You could be Labour Party supporter or United Workers Party supporter, but you're doing your job, and that is okay. And when you talk about institutional knowledge, I think the public service workers, they will come and they'll transcend different parties and whatever administration coming there, but they will always be there, and you cannot just take that lightly. So when you're going to see how petty some people will be, the victimization we've seen within the public service, and even now when Guy Joseph and the rest of them vex because some of the public servants will not let them go by with the corruption, and you know they will put the documents for us to see, I think that getting them vexed and the dangling of the acting positions, it doesn't work. So in all of that, in all of what we've seen here, yesterday the Prime Minister in an ecumenical service, years and years after all of the insults and after all of what we've seen being pitted against public servants and the system, the Prime Minister will have a heartfelt message to you, the public servants.
As part of the celebration of Public Service Week, an ecumenical service was held for public servants on Wednesday. Among the speakers was Prime Minister Alan Chastney, who had a heartfelt message for public servants. This year's theme seeks to highlight changes to public services as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Everybody smile. Jesus loves you. Won't you greet somebody now? Jesus.
On Wednesday, public servants were celebrated as part of Public Service Day at an ecumenical service held at the Minor Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. The local theme for this year's Public Service Day was the work landscape post-pandemic. Public servants were recognized for their significant contribution to St. Lucia, especially throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Honorable Alan Chastney spoke highly of public services in his opening remarks.
I'd like to congratulate all public officers for their contribution and the resilience demonstrated, especially through the COVID-19 pandemic. Our public officers continue to contribute significantly to managing the pandemic in one way or the other, and for you must be commended. Your creativity and service must not go unnoticed. This year's theme, chosen by the organizing committee, the work landscape post-pandemic, is no coincidence. The reference to the pandemic in this year's theme is quite appropriate given the tremendous contribution and indeed sacrifice the public servants everywhere have made towards this fight. There is no doubt that without strong, hardworking, fearless, and dedicated public service workers, most countries would have been completely overwhelmed by the ravages of COVID-19.
The Prime Minister noted that post-pandemic, the way in which public servants contribute to the workforce will be different, considering developments made throughout the COVID-19 pandemic.
However, we must face the reality that the aftermath of the pandemic will require that we do things differently. Having observed your contribution and sacrifices over the last year, I have no doubt that you will take on this challenge. The work landscape post-pandemic will change the way we transact businesses. Since the pandemic, we've seen changes to the business model not only within government, but with businesses big and small. Due to the transformative developments that are taking place in the world today and the accelerated adaptation and integration to the use of digital technology, St. Lucia has sped up the redesign of the way government services are delivered to our people. These changes will demand that our public service workers not only continue to play their part in national development, but to do so in a manner that upholds the highest standards of professional ethics. On behalf of my entire cabinet of ministers, I wish all public servants a successful Public Service Day. Let us continue to seek God's guidance and blessings in service to the people of St. Lucia and in all that we do. May God continue to bless you.
The celebration of Public Service Week continues with a panel discussion on the work landscape post-pandemic, which will be held on June 25th.
I am a soldier in the army. I am a soldier in the army of the Lord.
And the Prime Minister now speaking so, I don't know, glowingly in terms of the public service workers. And I think we'll take some calls now at 572-7588 and also via WhatsApp at 484-7588. I would want to hear anything you have to say. It can be anything else than what we've had so far in the show. But for the public servants, I think it is important that we stress that it's the institutional knowledge that they bring to the country. So they will always be working. They will always, I think, be professional. And I think the onus really is, the Prime Minister spoke about professionalism, but I think it's him and the people that have come into an administration and they continue to victimize people. They do not consult with people. You've heard so many of the accusations being leveled there. And I think that too is very, very important. So the public service will work. It is a machine. It continues to work, but it's like a vehicle that no matter what, it's always running. And with the politicians coming in, the policies, different policies, if you want to focus more on education, the direction that you want to go in, okay, the Prime Minister can handle that, but the work will always be there. And I think that too is important. So when we talk about people working, I don't think, it's enough to just say words within a church. It's the way people have been dealt with, the way they've been treated over the past 5 years, and they've not been treated well at all by this administration. We have a call. Good morning.
Good morning, Tresha.
Good morning, caller.
Tresha, let me deal with the first, an issue arising out of the first part of your show. The issue concerning the Ministry of Health and COVID-19. Tresha, if people were already confused by the type of data, information, and so on coming from the Ministry of Health, people are even more confused, I strongly suspect, after the latest press release coming from the Ministry of Health regarding the so-called reclassification of, what was it, deaths? COVID-19 related deaths? Tresha, I really don't understand what is going on. Several months after people have died, you have those people in your database. You're saying that those people died from COVID-related deaths, and you have those people, one of them, the first one being in April, case number 80, case number 81 being in February, then case number 82 in April, case number 83 in March, and case number 84 in May. The thing is not even in chronological order. I mean, what the heck is going on? Look, Tresha, there are so many, quite apart from the questions that reporters raise, that Edix Latcher raised. I mean, there are so many more questions. First of all, I mean, who are the people doing those tests? What is the definition of a COVID-related death? Who puts the data into the database? What type of trigger in that database or triggers in that database tells whoever is looking at that data that this is a COVID-related death? I mean, does a COVID-related death involve one factor, two factors, three individual factors, a combination of factors? I mean, what the heck is going on? And who takes those decisions? I mean, is it a manual thing, or do you depend on the way that you set up your database? That your database can you spit out that information? And I'm saying these things, Tresha, because I have a background over 25 years in systems analysis and programming. So I can say these things with some level of authority. I mean, and then of course, Tresha, what do you call them? The Medical and Dental Association people. Those people too must be held to account. I have said that on several occasions. The Medical and Dental Association people, headed by Dr. Merle Clark, some months ago sent a letter to the Prime Minister saying that if certain measures were not put in place within a month, we would have 90 deaths and 6,000 COVID cases. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Several months later, up to now, we're not up to 6,000 yet. We're not up to 90 deaths yet. So what happened? And remember, the Prime Minister rubbished the letter they sent him? I mean, so what happened? I mean, if we're not, at those numbers yet, I mean, on what did you base the figures that you sent to the Prime Minister? So all of those people must be held to account. We cannot continue in the way that we're going in this country. I mean, this level of incompetence, this level of foolishness, this level of headless chickens running all over the place and expect that things are going to get better. It just won't happen. Thanks, Tresha.
Thank you very much, caller. And thank you for reminding me of that letter, the projections by the SLMD. And I remember Charlie and some others saying that could never happen. And now we are at 84, 85, depending on what they say is the final count, 85 COVID deaths. And Charlie said, how can you ever get to 90? That cannot happen, Charlie said. And we're seeing it now. But, you know, as we go on and as the different activities will be held in honor of Public Service Week, I just want people to know, those of you working there and sometimes you hide to watch the show or you go home to watch the show or maybe whatever happens, and I've gotten reports of that. I do think that there are people that we need, people who are working, the technical knowledge that they bring, the institutional knowledge is so very important that you cannot, you know, mar it and muddy it with the politics. And now the Prime Minister clearly needs you. It's election year, so he'll come to the church and say the nice things. But like I said, people will forget what you said and what you did, but they will not remember, they will not forget how you made them feel. So in all of that, as we go on, I want you to remember that we depend on you for this country to run. And some people might take this to mean nothing. They come in as a politician, they're doing what they can for themselves. But in the end, it will be you. If there is a new, people ask for a change. But it's again the people there, the thousands of workers within the public service who will help make the change possible. So yeah, you are important. And not just in name only, and not just in, you know, trying to give a speech in the church to make you try to vote for them. Not for that either. Let's take the other call. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, miss.
Tresha, concerning the COVID-19 death, I realized that Shasney was getting to a number. Apparently, he wanted to go out there in the world to negotiate for more money, and hence he had to reach a target. Okay, so he had all these people working around with him. Remember, I called a show and I said, "Mama CMO that working Shasney's narrative for him." She is not doing a good job. If you have gone to school and you have a degree in what you're doing, you do it to the best of your ability. You understand? You're not going to push a man's narrative for him to get around to squeeze people or to squeeze a whole country. You don't do these things. And I realized that Chasney had an agenda in getting 90 deaths. Apparently, I don't know what they told him in the world out there. If you get to 90 deaths, you'll get another $44 million.
I don't know about that, caller.
Maybe that's what they told him. That is why he was pushing that forward for him to go to the house and get that 44 million for auntie. Because that is what I have to say right now. Because you're gonna get justification with these people for what they are doing. So you have to assume now what is happening because nobody's telling the truth. All of them lying. All of them. All right. That is why I said that. You see, Guy Joseph. You see, Baudelaire. Baudelaire is where little prisoners go that steal cheese and corned beef and biscuit in a supermarket. This cannot be for Guy Joseph. They need to take Guy Joseph to a place where you see they have that Stanford big prisoners that have committed big frauds. But I think they need to get the same plane that bring the horses down to St. Lucia to take them fees. You understand? To take them fees back to America to go and jail them because we don't have jail for these people there. These little jails is for people that smoke a little marijuana joint to get them on the road. You cannot bring these people down there to put them by these boys. You need big jail to shackle them in shackles. The big criminals shackle their ass down. That is how you have to jail these people. You understand? You cannot put these people by these little boys. And then we're going to hire the same plane that brought the horses down to bring them back to the States. This is what we're going to do. Remember, Shasney said we was going to have 7,000 jets landing. Masa ko te London. Ko te London say 7,000 jets la. Yeah, ready to land them. Let's not take London in Nancy's behind.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. Okay. But I do think when you spoke earlier of the numbers and that you do not trust it, I think that's what happens when people are making mistakes and it seems like things are being covered up. That's what you get. You get people who do not trust it. They think that there is an ulterior motive in everything that's being said here. I think that's a casualty of that. Let's take our final call. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Tresha.
Yes?
How you doing, my dear?
I'm okay. How are you?
You know, I'm doing okay. You know, we are to be blamed for a lot of these things we're going through.
Yeah?
Yeah, because we have tolerated these things for years. It wasn't as bad as it is now, but the signs were there. And we were not taking those guys serious because what they started there, they started a couple years back when they were in office, then they lose the election. So they came back to finish what they started. Now listen to me, you see all these insults, because I'm listening to a guy come on television. And when you hear him speak as if this man has done nothing. Now I am going to send a message to Philip JP and the crew that he has come in with him. These guys need to do something about some of these politicians. And if they don't do anything at all, it simply tells me that they come in to do the same thing or they will. You have to send a message out. We have to send a message out to politicians that you all are coming in to serve, not to rip the country off like that and to disrespect us and to insult us. And to make matters worse, now we have a crew now. I don't know who call themselves elders in churches, leaders in churches. You know, and what example are these guys setting? I do not know. Because people are calling, and again, calling these guys honorable. I have a problem with it because most of these people are not honorable. The office, maybe, yes, the office, but not them. Because there was the example there. Look at guy telling me you're an elder. Elder where? In a church, and then you come in on national television speaking as if, boy, you have done nothing wrong. The man is not conscious. Being the member of any denomination at all in St. Lucia, don't make you a man of God or don't make you a Christian, not because you go to a domination or you hold any office at all. So, Tresha, I want us now to do something about it. When the time comes, do away with these guys and make sure that these guys never see that office they're holding out there. They never see, not even the doors to that office again. Far less entering there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, caller. I appreciate your contribution, and I think that's a fair assessment of that people need to be punished for the crimes that we have seen and for the corruption that we're seeing in this country. And I think you do have a point that if there is to be a change and if Philip J. Pierre has to be instated, has to be put in there, that people want to see justice realized. I think that's fair. But that was our last call. I want to thank all of you for listening to us on the radio, on our partner station, Hits FM, for watching us on TV, and also on the different social media platforms where we will be every day. We'll be there tomorrow as well from 11, where we continue to speak about the different issues. But until I see you then, have a good one.
I can't stay.